My name's Marcus Bowcott, and I guess you know that. My practice has grown from essentially landscape painting. I just wanted to record what I saw from our place here, just sort of the local landscape. I mean, the northwest coast of Canada is quite a beautiful place. And so it kind of started with that. And I was studying at the Royal College of Art in London, England to get my master's degree. And Maggie Thatcher got elected. And all of a sudden, my tuition fees went way up. And I ended up working in the Arctic to make ends meet. So that changed my painting practice from kind of these sort of more, more beautiful to sort of the rough edges of living in an industrial culture. The work got kind of a bit heavy. I started incorporating sculpture. I didn't switch off painting. I've always kept painting. But I could employ humor with my sculpture that I couldn't with the painting. And so the practice has evolved over the years to combine sculpture and painting. On one hand, I want to make work that's sensuous, but I want to recognize my environment, the reality of what I see, which is quite disturbing for our species, really. I think we screwed up royally. And so a lot of my work addresses environmental change, and images of wildfires, images of oil rigs, oil derricks. Like I say, it's sort of heavy, right? And so I try to leaven it with a sense of playfulness, I suppose. Recently, I've been doing some combine paintings where I'm painting on car hoods, crushed car hoods. And because the context being the canvas is so pristine, right? And then I thought, well, that's kind of a bit of a lie, really, with what's happening globally. That really we should be painting on the stuff we're throwing away. So I've been experimenting with that. I think there's a lot of different conflicting motivations. Starting as a landscape painter, you're trained just to paint what you see. Take a look. What's in front of your eyes, and not settle for just some superficial representation that somebody's going to hang on their wall just to look pretty, right? That you are going to take a deeper look at what you're really seeing. All I'm doing is I'm calling it as I see it, right? I'm not so sure it can affect change. All I can do is say what I think, or paint what I see, and sculpt things like Trans Am Totem to respond to what I see as being a real dilemma or dilemmas. And so in that, it's sort of like it's embracing contradiction, right? There's a meaninglessness to it, but there's also a deep meaning in it, just for me feeling honest that I'm saying what I think. Not saying what I think, but working through a process of painting or sculpture that demands that I look a little deeper. So I started doing these images of cars piled up on top of each other, and did that for a few years. And it was like they were sort of interesting, but they were sort of kind of boring. I mean, I was stating the obvious, right? And like, how do I deal with this? And so at that time, this is Expo 86. There was a call out for sculptures for Expo 86, and Expo 86 was a transportation fair. And I thought, okay, I know what they need. They need a sundial made out of wrecked cars. And so I made that proposal. Of course, it didn't get accepted, right? So at any rate, that kind of flipped things. I'd buy these cars, and the 1/18 scale cars, like a lot of guys collect, right? And I would mess them up. and stack them on top of each other, and they're just dinky little sculptures, and I felt like there's something absurd to it. I think there's something absurd to making art. Like, I mean, we're all little kids in that regard, right? It is like, you get your hands on the Play-Doh and you make something. Anyhow, so anyhow, I started making these maquettes, and I ended up having an opportunity. My friend David Mack had been invited by the Vancouver Biennale to come to town to make a sculpture. And he is thinking of making a mad log cabin, which I thought was just brilliant. Anyhow, we're driving around town with the head of the Vancouver Biennale, Barry Moet. And because Dave stayed with us when he visited here. And he said, your piece would look good there, Marcus. And it was downtown, close to all the sports stuff. And the Biennale president said, what piece? Send me a picture. And he said, so a couple of days later, he writes back and says, yeah, we'll put it up if you can build it. Helene joined me in this, my wife and partner. And so we built the thing, and the Biennale ended up installing it. I remember when we were putting it together, and I showed this guy, some auto body guy, I was trying to get car parts or something. And I showed him a picture of what we're going to do. And he says, how did you get permission to do that? Like, it's so unlikely, because it's kind of a political, I think it's sort of a rude piece, right? It's not kind of a public art piece that is palatable in an aesthetic sense. I was, in developing those maquettes over the years, I realized that the eye needs to move around them. And I thought, and I started incorporating spirals into it. And so here it is, these static objects that imply a sense of movement. And then putting it on top of the old growth tree. I mean, it's basically talking about what we say we think we value. Everybody out here is sort of, oh, we love nature, we love old growths, we love our environment. But really, what do we love? We love driving around in our Beamers and our Teslas. And so it's inverting what we say we think to what we actually think, right? And so I think a lot of people pick up on that sort of honesty, right? Here we all are, really concerned about our environment, and we're cutting out humanities departments, right? We're cutting it. So young people don't have the access to art education like I had when I was young, right? I mean, it cost me virtually nothing to go study in a local college, which led me to the Ontario College of Art, and then finally to the Royal College of Art. And it's somehow fitting that, my final year at the Royal College of Art, Maggie Thatcher gets in power, and things start getting more expensive. So you've got working class people, middle class people that figure, all right, I better go to the Polytechnic. Art is too expensive. It's not for me in my class, right? So I think Trans Am Totem sort of relates in that way, because I think a lot of working people and just regular people just go, yeah, it's not advertising. It's almost like in our current moment, you wonder if there is such a thing as a meaningful legacy. The only meaningful legacy, I think, is that we help make it more viable to live and thrive and to embrace our deeper humanity.